To me, this is definitely one of those topics that has a very limited shelf life, because this is the kind of topic that if I spoke about this like a year or two from now, it really wouldn't be as relevant or interesting as it is today, because the frame in which this player is relevant within this market, it's at its all-time high, pretty much. It's not going to get any higher, and from here on out, it's just going to be a little bit more down and down and down as the years go on. So, because sometimes we like to take a look at a blast in the past talking about Vancouver Canucks stuff, let's go over the time as reported by the late Jason Botchford, R.I.P. Mr. Botchford, by the way, as to when Jacob Markstrom reportedly requested a trade from the Vancouver Canucks. Now, here's the context of this whole story right here. Back in 2014, and man, it's just kind of weird taking a look at it like that. 2014, bro. 2014, that was 6 years ago. I was in grade 8, I believe. Yeah, I was coming out of grade 8 because that was 2014 in the summer, and we were heading into grade 9. This is back after the Roberto Luongo trade, and if you're a Canucks fan in any capacity, you probably know at least something about this, but Luongo, good player, big contract, traded over to Florida. The guy we got back in net was Jacob Markstrom. And at the time, this Jacob Markstrom guy was coming off of being one of the top goaltending prospects in the entire NHL. He was drafted in the 2008 Entry Draft, second round, 31 overall by the Florida Panthers, and a lot of people were saying this guy has the potential to be very, very, very good in the NHL. It's just some time in Sweden, some time in the Panthers organization, up and down with the AHL and the NHL somewhat. He wasn't amazing, and he hadn't really taken over that number one starting role. He was already at this time like 24 years old or whatever, so people were like, okay, the time is kind of ticking. The time is getting a little bit shortened there. And it's kind of funny, just taking a look at that in hindsight, because Thatcher Demko is like 24 now, so Markstrom back at this time frame was the age that Demko is today, and Markstrom was not in the same position where Demko was stealing games left and right in the playoffs. So he got traded over to Vancouver, and Roberto Luongo was coming back. However, the interesting part was, heading into the 2014-2015 NHL season, the Vancouver Canucks made a signing, and they acquired a guy by the name of Ryan Miller. Now, Ryan Miller was a good Canucks goalie, and I honestly think he was a little bit too good, because I kind of said this a little bit before, too. I think the Canucks overachieved in 2014-15, where they made the playoffs, where Henrik and Daniel had 70 points and Verbata had 30 goals. I think the Canucks overachieved that year, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Ryan Miller was so gosh darn good that it put this team in a position to remain competitive so they wouldn't rebuild sooner. But that's an argument for a different day. After the Vancouver Canucks signed Ryan Miller, here were some reports coming out from Jason Botchford of the province. We're going over onto NHL.NBCSports.com to read about what Botchford said. Take a look at this right here. There's a report that Jacob Markstrom wants the Canucks to trade him. The Canucks wanted to start the 2014-15 campaign led by a goalie with experience rather than the young duo of Eddie Lack and Jacob Markstrom. They accomplished that by signing Ryan Miller to a 3-year, $18 million contract. Oh my gosh, Ryan Miller was making $6 million. I can't even remember that. But it also put Jacob Markstrom's future with the team in question. Markstrom only played 4 games with Vancouver after they acquired him in the Florida Panthers' Roberto Luongo trade, and now he might not even fit on the team as a backup. With that in mind, it's believed that he's requested a trade, according to the province and Jason Botchford. Take a look at this over here. Let's go over onto another article, thescore.com, where it says, Botchford reports the team has received interest from 3 teams at least, and GM Jim Benning stated that the Canucks are working towards finding a suitable deal, but with no guarantees. So, oh my gosh. 6 years ago, after the Canucks acquired Jacob Markstrom in the Luongo trade of all things, which was one of the most impactful trades in Canucks history, just from the star power point of view, because Roberto Luongo was Roberto freaking Luongo, and they were in a position to maybe even trade the guy they got back just a few months after because they signed Ryan Miller. What in the world? Oh boy. See, this is kind of why I said that this is a topic that is only here for the now, because if we talked about this a few years later, no, it doesn't really matter anymore. He's a Calgary Flames guy now. But Markstrom was in a position where he was apparently on the trade block, and he apparently requested a trade himself. However, we had some statements later on in that same week, I believe, talking about how Markstrom straight up denies the trade request. He says he did not ask for a trade after the Ryan Miller signing, and instead he told News 1130 in Vancouver that he's super excited to come to camp after working real hard this summer, and that he sees the Miller signing as a challenge. Oh boy, yes, a challenge indeed. Now, if you know what happens with Jacob Markstrom afterwards, he doesn't actually play with the Canucks full-time in 2014-15. He plays in Utica. He's the starter for that squad. And it's actually really funny how it happened, because let me try to not even pull from any sources. Let's see if I can get this off the top of my head correct. Vancouver was in a position where they had 3 goaltenders on their roster for a good part of the offseason. It was Miller, Lack, Markstrom. But then at the very last second, the Canucks put Jacob Markstrom on waivers, and they were like, okay, this guy's going to go to Utica. Yeah, he's going to the AHL. Waivers, buddy, waivers. And they did that at a very specific time, because at that point in time, the NHL was already getting ready to start. Other teams already had goalies on their teams that they knew were going to be the goalies on their teams. There wasn't really a need to go after a Jacob Markstrom, who was 24, but who was somewhat disappointing compared to the potential and what people thought he would be 5-6 years ago. And Markstrom ended up going to Utica unclaimed. No team picked him off of waivers for free. And you kind of know what happens next. In 2014-15, Jacob Markstrom played with the Utica Comets. Absolute stud of a goaltender, man. .934 save percentage, 32 games played, a .188 goals against average in the postseason. They went to the finals and they lost. The Comets did lose. I remember watching these games, too, in 2015 in the playoffs. I was in grade 9 at the time, man. I was in high school just, like, chilling after doing math homework or whatever, and, like, cringing at myself over how I behaved around girls in my school and all that. But Markstrom was here in the playoffs with a .925 save percentage and a .211 goals against average in 23 postseason games. He was 25 years old, and Vancouver Canucks fans were like, yo, this guy in the AHL, Jacob Markstrom, he looks like he's ready to dominate. And that's what he did. Because the next season he played 33 games with Vancouver. Pretty good save percentage, pretty good goals against average, and as time went on, after the ups and downs where Markstrom would let goals in at the beginning of the game and eventually choke things out with a few minutes left, outlasting that Ryan Miller that was acquired that may have pushed him towards wanting a trade, outlasting the Eddie Lack, who ended up becoming a real estate agent, which is really cool. Good job for you, Eddie Lack. Markstrom became the number one, and he became one of the best goalies in the league. And I say that with 110% conviction. This is not me being a biased Canucks fan or whatever, saying that my goalie is good because he's my goalie, but Markstrom became elite. And it took him a while to do it. He was 28, 29 years old when he became really, really good. But it happened. It happened, and it came at a point where people were like, okay, this is finally it. This right here, this Markstrom who is just stealing games in the postseason, this Markstrom who is making so many saves night in and night out for the Vancouver Canucks, this Markstrom that finished as one of the top goalies in the Vezina voting for 2020, this is the guy that the Florida Panthers tried to draft in 2008, but he didn't show up for the entire time he was in Florida. It took a while, but he's finally here. And Roberto Luongo was good for the Panthers, obviously. He's very, very good. I love Luongo, man. Love him. But Markstrom today, man, oh boy, he was so good. And it's why he was in a position where he was offered so much money by Calgary. Again, I said this before, I'll say it again. $6 million till 2026. I love Marky, but no thanks, man. I love Marky. Go ahead, get that money, man. Get paid $36 million. Get paid the rest of your retirement and life savings money that you're never going to need to work another day in your life after getting this contract. Get it, Markstrom. Just, yeah, 6x6 contracts have not been great for the Canucks, and I guess anybody who knows what I'm talking about can fill in the blanks. So, it's good that the Vancouver Canucks did not match that contract. It's good for Markstrom because he's getting a lot of money. Calgary, you guys got yourselves a good goalie. But I wanted to use this video here today as an opportunity to tell the story as to when people thought Markstrom was on the trade block, when the Canucks might have actually had an opportunity to do it because they had two goalies in Lack and Miller, both of whom really became good once in a while, but instead they wrung it out with Jacob Markstrom, who became elite, and who has passed the torch down to a very, very good, a very bright, young, up-and-coming Thatcher Demko. I'll say it right now. When Jacob Markstrom was acquired by the Vancouver Canucks when he was 24, he was not as good as Demko is now at 24. Absolutely not. They're not even in the same realm. Marky was great with Utica, yes, but I remember watching Markstrom's first few games with the Canucks, even after he got traded for. He wasn't as good as Demko now. So if you're a fan of what Markstrom did at 30, wait till you'll see Thatcher Demko at 30. That's what I'll say here. So, talk to me in the comments what you thought about this weird video idea. I hope you enjoyed this video of That 99. And bye.